Messiah, Dajjal.
Which island is it? In 1917, the British Secretary of State was a man named Lord Balfour. And Lord Balfour made a declaration, a stunning declaration. Britain was the superpower in the world, and Lord Balfour declared that the British government intends to pursue an effort for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. In 1919, a British general led an army which defeated the Turkish army, and from a Jewish perspective liberated Jerusalem and liberated the Holy Land. And then Britain became the power which controlled the Holy Land. The League of, in those days you didn't have the United Nations, you had the League of Nations. And the League of Nations conferred upon Britain something called mandate power. So Britain was the mandate power who controlled the Holy Land. Britain controlled the Holy Land from 1919 until 1948. In 1948, Britain acted as the midwife for the baby to be born. The baby, of course, was the state of Israel. In consequence of all of this, I have come to the conclusion that the island was Britain. And so when Dajjal was released and commenced his mission to deceive Banu Israel and to deliver to them what would appear to be the return of the Golden Age, it is from Britain that he commenced his mission. But if there's anyone who differs with me, then I'll have to invite them to tell me, you tell me which island it is. You cannot just differ with me without telling me which island is it. Because the hadith is there in Sahih Muslim. You've got to deal with the hadith. During the time that Dajjal was launching his attack from Britain, the Holy Land was liberated of non-Jewish rule. During the time that Britain was hosting Dajjal, the Jews came back to the Holy Land. And during the time that Dajjal was launching his attack from Britain, the state of Israel was restored. 3 out of 4 already delivered. And in all of this, the overwhelming majority of Jews have been absolutely convinced that all of this represents blessings from Allah. That Allah is validating the Jewish claim to truth. That Allah is fulfilling His promise to Banu Israel. Now comes a little more difficult part. It was fairly simple to identify the island of Britain. If when Dajjal was in a day which lasts like a year, he will be in an island, according to the hadith of Tamim al-Dari, where will he be in a day which is like a month? Is he going to move to another territory? And if he moves to another territory, how can we recognize it? The yardstick which I use to measure whether or not Dajjal has moved to another territory in a day which is like a month is the yardstick of the state of Israel. Who is the one who is keeping it alive? Who is the one who is conferring upon it security? Who is the one who is building it up constantly, feeding it, and making it stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger? Is it Britain? The answer is no. Remember, your brother Imran is also a student of international relations. Don't forget that. The answer is no. Someone else has taken over from Britain as the strategic ally of the state of Israel. Britain is still there, but now there's someone else more important than Britain, with a more strategic relationship. The United States of America is without any question whatsoever the most important strategic ally of the state of Israel in the world today. Without any question whatsoever. The United States of America is the country which is supporting Israel with the greatest amount of financial assistance and material assistance. The United States of America is the country which has a strategic military alliance with the state of Israel. And so, I have come to the conclusion that Dajjal, in a day which is like a month, is no longer in Britain. Britain now has to give way to another country. Britain was the superpower. Britain was ruling the world. But now another country mysteriously, strangely, inexplicably takes over from Britain as the ruling power in the world and the strategic ally of the state of Israel. This is the United States of America. This is the United States of America. When did it happen? Now we're going to test your knowledge of international affairs. When did it happen? I think you would agree with me, number one, that the Second World War would be the turning point, clearly. Because in the Second World War, all the Allied troops on the continent of Europe, which were fighting Hitler, were under one command. Was it a British general? Huh? No. Who is it? General Eisenhower, an American general. And so here is tangible evidence that the United States has now taken over from Britain as a senior partner. Evidence number two. At the end of the Second World War, in 1945, the international community came together in a conference in Bretton Woods in upstate New York to create a new international monetary system. Prior to this, Britain, London, was the financial capital of the world. Ever since the Bank of England was established maybe 200 years earlier, London was the financial capital of the world. And the ruling currency in the world was the British sterling pound. His Majesty the sterling pound. But now at Bretton Woods something strange happens. The Bretton Woods Agreement confers upon the US dollar the status of the ruling currency. And the Bretton Woods Agreement confers upon Washington the status of the financial capital of the world. Because the International Monetary Fund is now located in Washington. The British didn't like that at all. The World Bank is located in Washington. The British didn't like that at all. So here is the second tangible evidence that Britain has now conceded and the United States has now taken over as the ruling power in the world. And then came a third and even more dramatic evidence. In 1952, a revolution took place in Egypt, and the Egyptian king Farouk was overthrown by the military. The military put General Muhammad Najib as the president. But he was like a figurehead really, because there were a group of officers who really controlled the thing. Muhammad Najib remained as the president from 1952 until 1956. But in 1955, there was a very important conference of Asian and African states which took place in a city in Indonesia. Which one? Bandung. I was in Bandung 2 weeks ago. Bandung, water in Bandung very cold. When you take your bath in the morning, very cold water. At the Bandung conference, it is not Muhammad Najib who goes to represent Egypt, but rather a man named Gamal Abdel Nasser. That's a sign of who is in charge. The next year, 1956, Gamal Abdel Nasser replaces Muhammad Najib as the president of Egypt. Shortly after that, same 1956, he nationalized the Suez Canal. Who built the Suez Canal? The French. Ferdinand de Lesseps was the French engineer. And then the French and the British came together in a joint control of the Suez Canal. Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalizes the Suez Canal, removes the French and British troops which were there, and Egyptian troops now take control of the Suez Canal. This is as plain and as clear an act of defiance and of confrontation with Britain as you could possibly find. In order for Britain to have any vestige of a claim to be a superpower, Britain has to respond, must respond. Well, what Britain did was, strangely, mysteriously, Britain kept the United States out. And the British and the French joined with Israel. And these three countries invaded Egypt. They landed in Suez and they took control of Suez. And the Israeli army swept through the Sinai Peninsula and took control of the whole of Sinai. And the Israeli army reached to the Suez Canal. General Dwight Eisenhower said, no, I will not allow this. Go back. Can you tell Britain that? Withdraw your troops, go back. Will Britain obey? Sir Anthony Eden was the British Prime Minister. Guess what Britain had to do? Britain had to withdraw its troops. And France had to withdraw its troops. And the state of Israel had to withdraw its troops back to Israel. Because the American president said, no, I will not permit it. Go back. So here you have the third, the most dramatic of all evidence that the United States of America has now taken over from Britain as the ruling power in the world. And that the United States of America still has this strategic relationship with the State of Israel. I have taken pains to mention dates because I want you to calculate. That was a day like a year, and this is a day like a month. What comes after this? Now is the time you have to think. And if out there in Indonesia they could understand it so easily and so quickly, grasp it so quickly, there is no reason why you cannot. In order for Dajjal to complete his mission, he has to move from a day which is like a month to a day which is like a week. If when he was in a day like a year, he was in one territory, and that was the ruling territory, the ruling power, and then in a day which is like a month, he moved to another territory, and that country became the ruling power, it follows therefrom that when he moves to a day which is like a week, he will move to a third place, a third country. And that country will now replace the United States of America as the ruling power in the world. But it will not rule for long. Just a short time. Which will be that territory?